Okay, now we want to make a connection with the hub server mode. Before we can do that, we also, like in the previous video with the P2P, peer-to-peer connection, we have to set up port forwarding. This is something that only has to be done on the server side. So if you're just going to be a client connecting to your friend's hub server, where everyone's going to join eventually, you don't have to do anything. But if you are the server, then you have to activate port forwarding. Now, other than the peer-to-peer server, where you only had to activate the 4464 port on both TCP protocol and UDP protocol, now we additionally, for the hub server connection, need to port forward 61,000 and then 61,001, 61,002, up to how many people you want to connect. So 61,000 XXX, where XXX is the maximum number of people you want to have a connection to as a server. So for example, if I played in a band and we're 5 people, I would want, well, obviously I am already connected, so I would want the other 4 to connect to me, which means I would have to activate port 61,000, 61,001, 61,002, and 61,003. If that makes sense. So that is in addition to the 4464 TCP and UDP, and those 61,000 and more are only on UDP. I cannot give a general manual on how to activate your ports. That differs from ISP to ISP, but I can show you an example. For example, on AT&T, there's this article that I'll link below the video, where you basically choose the modem that you have. For example, let's say we had this one, and it will send us instruction and tell us how to do it. So, go to your gateway settings. You can see in the bottom left corner that it will link us directly to an IP address, which is the modem. That is my router. That is in my living room, and on that router, I can then set the different settings, including, as you can see here, I'd go to firewall and then NAT/gaming. So there you will find an option to say add port to forward, and you would add the 4464 and say TCP UDP, and then additionally add 61,000 and so on. Now, if you're like I am on Xfinity Comcast, you have to go to internet.xfinity.com, log in with your username that you probably got when you set up your modem or router, and in those settings you will find the port forwarding option. So you can see that depending on ISP and even your modem and the updates, I mean, those menus constantly change. So you might have to do a little digging around to find where you can activate it. Now, you can also call the tech support for your ISP. Sometimes they're helpful, sometimes they're not helpful. If you have trouble finding your port forwarding options, you might want to talk to your fellow musicians if maybe somebody else could set up a hub server. So then again, as a client, you don't have to have that enabled. But maybe for other people with different ISPs, it's easier to find those options. Keep in mind that when I did this on Xfinity, I specifically not only had to say activate those ports, but also after connections were incoming, I had to again retrospectively say, yes, I'm allowing that connection that just tried to join me to actually connect to my server. That also took at least 3 hours for the request to be put into place by Xfinity. So this whole port forwarding thing might take you a day or two. All right, if the port forwarding is done, let's continue with the second half of this video, which is going to be about actually creating those connections. All right, after having set up the often very cumbersome port forwarding, let's take a look at what this looks like on each participant's end. Now, let's say, again, this is my local Mac. I have my terminal up and I have my QJet control, and this is, again, my collaborator's Mac. Think of this as one of my collaborators, right? In the hub server mode, what we can do is we can connect multiple people to a server. So let's imagine my collaborator number 1 here, out of many, will be the hub server. What that person will have to do is send out, again, his or her IP address to all the clients that we are in our group that are going to join his or her server. Now, number 1, again, choose a sample rate and choose a buffer size. So for this example, again, we might want to choose 64. Let's check on my end too, 64. And everyone else also has 64. So our friend who's going to set up the hub server is going to type in the following: Jacktrip dash now uppercase S, right? It's a hub server, so we want the uppercase server. And now there's a mode that that person can choose. I recommend choosing between dash P4 and dash P2 mode. Think about dash P4 as a great way of testing the connection. So that means that everyone who connects to your friend will also receive their own channel back. So if I connected to my friend, I would not only hear everyone else who joined the server, but also myself. I find that a little bit annoying because I don't want to hear myself, right? I want to hear everyone else, and then I can maybe hear myself on my own. So there's the other option to go with the P2 mode, which essentially means you hear everyone who is connected. You as a client hear everyone else who's connected, but you don't hear yourself back, which makes it easier to make music because you're not, distracted by your own sound that might have a little bit of a latency. There's other options like the P0 mode or the P3 mode, but how about we start by setting up the hub server on your friend's end with a P2 mode, meaning that you hear everyone but yourself. Now, before we start that connection, we want to make sure that each of our QJack control start buttons was hit, so that Jack is running again in the background. And now we're gonna expect our friend who runs the hub server to hit enter. So then, as you can see, the server is waiting for client connections. On our end, what we will do is we will say Jacktrip dash capital C, or a client that is going to join a hub server, so capital C. And now our friend's IP address. And all the other clients are going to do the same thing. Everyone is going to connect now to that IP address with exactly the same syntax here. And maybe dash N1 for one channel only. Once we hit enter, you can see we have received a connection from peer. And on our friend's end, you can see that it even tells you which IP address just joined. So that's great for checking which of your friends has connected successfully and which one didn't. Whoever's in your musical group, however many students you have, everyone can join. And the server, as you can see in the connection window, now is also seeing the IP address from the first person who joined, which in this case is my local Mac. On my end, I can see that I am connected to, again, one of those Jacktrip hub servers. You see that if another person would join, on the server's end, there would be another IP address popping up that will tell the person who made the hub server who is currently connected. If you're having problems with the connection, I'm assuming it might be because port forwarding is not set up properly, but also make sure to check your messages window and in the terminal for any error messages. If that worked for you, congratulations, you have successfully established a server on your own and connected with one or more people.